serious. I think it's a big game to them, and they don't understand that the more confusion and the more back and forth that we do, no one suffers but the people.
Down, and that is why the building is closed.
Well, we were advised by the attorneys to close the building. The building shouldn't be open.
The meeting began, Zoals verwacht, in chaos. No one familiar with South suburban politics was surprised. Drama had always been a hallmark of these gatherings, but this particular session escalated to new levels of dysfunction. The meeting was dominated door Tiffany Henyard, de Supermayor, Wines double role als Zeil Mayor als Township Supervisor de basis legt voorin nacht van tumult. What was meant to be a professional discussion over the township's most pressing issues quickly spiraled into something resembling a soap opera, een worstelwedstrijd en een reality show, allemaal in een. From the moment Henyard called the meeting to order, it was evident this would not be a productive session. Instead of focusing on the township's critical problems, Henyard lanceerd een fel envelope de trustees. She accused them of neglecting their duties, skipping meetings, and undermining the township's operations. You didn't attend a board meeting, and nu hebben we geen verzekering. Schreeuwde ze, frustratie evident in haar stem. The lack of insurance was a serious issue, waardoor township medewerkers wekenlang kwetsbaar waren. Yet, instead of focusing on resolving this urgent problem, the meeting quickly devolved into a blame game, with both sides bickering back and forth and failing to work together. Henyard's aggressive posture only fueled the chaos, escalating tensions rather than alleviating them. The failure to address something so basic as insurance coverage made it clear to everyone present that the township's governance was in deep trouble. What should have been a conversation about solving critical issues, zoals waarnemers bescherming, turned into a spectacle of finger-pointing and petty infighting. Henyard's combative leiderschap stijl verergerde de dysfunctie. There was no accountability, no sense of direction, and certainly geen real governance to be found. In the face of this crisis, Henyard's behavior left many questioning how she could be trusted to tackle the community's real needs. Once seen as a promising leader with bold plans for the future, Henyard had devolved into a political circus. Personal grudges took precedence over the welfare of the people she was elected to serve. As the meeting dragged on, it became increasingly clear that this level of dysfunction was likely to continue, leaving the residents of Dolton and Thornton Township wondering how much longer they would have to endure such chaotic leadership. Critics of Henyard were quick to respond, accusing her of using the situation as a political maneuver instead of addressing the township's pressing problems. Chris Gonzalez, one of Henyard's fiercest opponents, argued that Henyard didn't need the trustees to resolve the insurance issue. She could have handled it herself if she truly cared about the township's well-being. Gonzalez, who had once supported Henyard for her supervisory role, had turned against her after they fell out over their support for competing candidates in a bitter Democratic primary. His criticisms were especially pointed given their history. Gonzalez had once been part of Henyard's inner circle, maar hun relatie verslechterd toen hij met Henyard's politie tegen Stander, Stats Senator Napoleon Harris. This tension boiled over during the meeting. Henyard read over Gonzalez werd evident naarmate de sessie vorderde. Her temper flared, and she openly insulted the trustees, calling them stupid and accusing them of deliberately sabotaging the township's budget. Her words were laced with bitterness and resentment, revealing just how personal the meeting had become. It was no longer about solving the township's problems of making the community a better place. It had become a stage for Henyard old scores settle and Evans's Aaron. As the meeting continued to spiral out of control, it became clear that Henyard was more concerned with maintaining her political agenda and taking down her enemies than with governing or working collaboratively to address the township's challenges. The lack of professionalism was evident in every atwisseling, and a failure to focus on real solutions only deepened the growing sense of disillusionment among residents and public officials alike. Many began to wonder just how much longer the township could function under such a leadership style. What should have been a meeting direct op problemaplosing, devolved quickly into a public airing of Henyard's frustrations. She launched into a series of attacks on the trustees, accusing them of neglecting their duties. The trustees, in turn, responded with counterattacks, accusing Henyard of being incapable of managing the township. The critical issues, like the lack of insurance coverage, were left by the wayside as both sides became entrenched in their positions, more focused on personal grievances than on resolving the township's pressing needs. As the meeting wore on, it became increasingly clear dat nok Henyard nok de trustees geïnteresseerd waren in het vinden van oplossingen. They were more concerned with one-upping each other, engaged in a petty display of ego and frustration. What should have been a session gericht op het oplossen van urgent kwesties, turned instead into another spectacle of political infighting. Residents, already frustrated with the ongoing turmoil, were left feeling defeated and disappointed. Their hopes for meaningful progress were dashed by the political circus unfolding before them. The dysfunction on display was so staggering that one resident compared the meeting to a soap opera, while another joked it felt more like a WWE match than a government session. Both descriptions were not far from the truth. The meeting had evolved into a public display of childish behavior and political posturing, highlighting the deepening divides within Henyard's administratie and a growing dysfunction among local leaders. The inability of Henyard, the trustees, and other elected officials to set aside personal conflicts in favor of focusing on the community's needs was palpable. As the meeting concluded Zonder resolution, it was painfully clear that Dolton and Thornton Township need a lean grappling with ineffective leadership, but also with a political environment where drama and infighting took precedence over real governance. The consequences for the community were clear: frustration en distress groeiden, en betekenis val verandering leek verde erweg dan ut. The township's residents, already disillusioned by the ongoing chaos, were left wondering how much longer they would have to endure this circus voordat they could see a change in leadership that would prioritize the community's well-being over personal vendettas. The failure of this meeting underscored the deep dysfunction that had come to define Henyard's leadership and raised serious questions about the future of the township. Continued dysfunction fueled by Tiffany Henyard's combative and divisive approach seemed only to ensure that the township's problems would continue to escalate unless something drastic changed. Unfortunately, the entrenched positions and lack of cooperation among those in power made it difficult to see any prospects for meaningful reform, leaving the people of Dolton and Thornton Township in a state of deep uncertainty about their future. To make matters worse, the meeting, streamed live for a broader audience, quickly became a spectacle for viewers online. The comment section turned into a battleground of polarized viewpoints. Henyard's supporters rallied behind her, applauding her refusal to back down in the face of what they perceived as trustee obstruction. On the other hand, her critics pointed fingers at Henyard, accusing her of sparking the chaos in the first place. One commentator summed up the frustration of many residents, stating, "This is the reason why Thornton Township doesn't get anything done," lamenting that Henyard leaked to be the only one trying to clean up the mess, all while facing resistance from all sides. Another comment echoed the sentiment, noting, "There's too much drama and not enough action," pointing out that as long as the infighting and personal conflicts voortduurden, de groeiend financieel last van de gemeente alleen maar zo verergeren. A lack of adequate insurance coverage and the inability to make critical decisions left everything vulnerable, raising legal and financial risks with each passing day. Township properties, vehicles, and essential programs were left unprotected, and with every day that passed, the stakes grew higher. Employees remained at risk, and the township's financial future seemed more uncertain than ever. What should have been a meeting over problemoplossing en samenwerking was in plots daarvan een nieuw hoofdstuk in de voortdurende saga van politieke dysfunctioneel in Dolton and Thornton Township. Residents who had hoped OP change were once again left to pick up the pieces of a system that seemed more focused on internal battles than on the future well-being of the community. The question remained, how much longer could this chaos continue before the damage became irreversible? As the holiday season approached, employees in Dolton and Thornton Township vonden zich onzeker over de toekomst van hun banen, wat hen in een staat van limbo liet. Meanwhile, residents who relied on essential emergency assistance programs, such as food support and transportation for medical appointments, were left questioning whether they could depend on these services in times of need. The lack of leadership and cooperation within the township board only seemed to perpetuate an environment where personal agendas and grudges took precedence over the community's needs, deepening the uncertainty for everyone involved. Rather than addressing the immediate critical issues at hand, such as insurance coverage and budget approval, the meeting only served to entrench the political divide and fuel the narrative of dysfunction that already plagued the township. The longer these conflicts dragged on, the greater the risk of permanent damage to the community's stability. With essential services on the brink of collapse, both residents and employees were left wondering how much longer they would have to endure this cycle of infighting and neglect before something could be done to restore order and refocus on the township's real problems. As the meeting came to a close without resolution, the situation became even more dire. Dolton and Thornton Township were facing not only a lack of effective leadership but also a political environment where egos and personal grudges outweighed the interest of the community. Residents, already disillusioned, had little faith that this chaotic cycle would end anytime soon, leaving many to question how much longer they would have to endure that their leaders could finally prioritize the real issues facing their community. Voters in the township were set to head to the polls in February for the primary election, but with no sign of cooperation among the leaders and a growing sense of distrust, the future of Dolton and Thornton Township remained uncertain. The growing frustration was palpable, and as one attendee, Kazi, shrugged, "It's just another day in Thornton Township," reflecting the exhaustion that had taken root in the community. Meanwhile, Tiffany Henyard's decision to host a bingo night amid the ongoing crisis only served to fuel the anger of her critics. What's even more disturbing was how generalized this dysfunction was geworden. Many residents now expected meetings to evolve into shouting matches, personal attacks, and little hope of substantial progress. One citizen, visibly frustrated, questioned how Henyard kan bingo kan prioriteren toon de township om haar heeninstort. In response, Henyard's supporters claimed she was simply trying to preserve a sense of community during these challenging times. However, the optics of the event didn't sit well with many, especially those who felt that leadership should focus more on finding real solutions than distractions. Despite her insistence on wanting to keep employees employed and avoid layoffs, Henyard appeared more focused on political maneuvering than on addressing the urgent problems facing the township. The reality for residents, particularly the most vulnerable, was far more dire. Seniors who relied on vital services like meal programs and transportation found themselves at risk as the township lacked adequate insurance coverage. Without this essential safety net, these programs were at risk of shutting down entirely, depriving those in need of the support they desperately relied on. The township's dysfunction continued to deepen, and with each passing day, residents grew increasingly irate over prolonged controversy and the palpable lack of progress. Many believed that the situation was no longer about addressing the real needs of the community but about personal grudges and political gamesmanship. It became clear that the township's ongoing crisis, exacerbated by Henyard's leadership, was doing significant damage to its reputation. Public perception was shifting, and waar mensen zich nu om bekomerden, was niet politiek theater of showmanship, markt actie. They wanted solutions, not distractions. The growing sentiment was that the township's future was at stake. As leadership continued to bicker and fail to meet basic needs, the damage to the community was mounting. The dysfunction was no longer something that could be ignored, and with every failed meeting and lack of resolution, the sense of urgency and frustration only grew. Residents were increasingly unwilling to tolerate the political games. As the crisis continued to unfold, it became clear that unless something drastic changed, the township would only continue to spiral further into dysfunction and instability. The longer the dysfunction in Thornton Township dragged on, the more uncertain the community's future became, making it increasingly hard for residents to see a clear path forward. With the ongoing political chaos, many felt manipulated, and distrust had only deepened. At the center of the turmoil was Tiffany Henyard, whose leadership remained deeply contentious, with sharply divided opinions on her role and approach. For some, Henyard is a resolute and determined leader, steadfast in defending her position and fiercely protecting her authority. To others, she is combative, unyielding, and unwilling to listen to opposing viewpoints. This tension came to a head during a recent meeting when a trustee offered a financial compromise to address some of the township's issues, only for Henyard to outright reject it, further solidifying the perception that her leadership style was contributing to the dysfunction rather than seeking a solution. Henyard's refusal to compromise only heightened the political divide and made it clear that any potential for collaboration was all but gone. The township's future seemed increasingly uncertain as Henyard's approach, which prioritized personal battles over problem-solving, continued to alienate those who might otherwise be willing to help restore order. The town's residents, caught in the middle, could only watch as their community's future verdered at unreaped gleed. Tiffany Henyard's leadership in Thornton Township continues to be a source of intense controversy, particularly as her approach to governance has become increasingly combative, seeking